Good morning, coaches. My name is Kayla Grey, and I am pleased to welcome you to day 2 of the 10th annual Toronto Raptors Coaches Open House presented by Tangerine. Okay, so after each session, we're going to have a pop quiz, a Kahoot, so be sure to pay attention. We're going to put the information up on the screen. You can follow along on your phone, and the person who answers the most questions correctly the fastest, that's right, they win. Speed, accuracy, people, they matter here. So the person with the highest score will be mailed a signed Raptors jersey. All right, let's get started here. Joining me in conversation is the motivational speaker and former Toronto Argonaut, Orlando Bowen. He's passionate about youth leadership and empowering people to overcome adversity. Orlando, thank you so much for taking the time. How are you, my friend?
I'm amazing. The one question I was asked was, can I play? Can I get in on the game? Get in on the Kahoot?
We might hook you up with something after.
Okay, appreciate it.
Oh, my gosh.
Seed planted.
So why it's so great that you're here is, first of all, your energy is beyond, but also the way that you move in society and the way that you inspire people to get off the sidelines and to not kind of be in that space of, what do I do and how can I help with things? Yeah. You're like, no, you are valuable as is. It's all about just jumping in. I want to get your mantra right. It's one voice, one team.
That's right. So, yes.
So what does that mean? And especially in these times, because there's some times, how important is that now?
Yeah, well, I think it's more important than ever, right? So, and I say, so this for you, you're watching at home, doesn't matter where you are. When I say one voice, I want you with passion and energy to say one team. One voice.
One team.
One voice.
One team.
All right, because that's what it takes. Really and truly, if we're really committed to moving the needle on what's possible and the things that have stirred us emotionally, we need to move as though we're operating from the same team or on the same team and willing to make a difference.
That is so important. And I think a huge part of that is everyone showing up vulnerable and showing up with their stories as well. I mean, you've had to dig deep in your history as well. Can you maybe open up about the events that ended your CFL career?
Yeah, so I was 26 years old, married to a hottie, still married to that hottie. We had a 1-year-old son, and we were pregnant with our second. And I was very active in community, because one of the things that we were always raised to do was to give back, right? So the whole notion of raising the bar and being excellent, but then making sure that you raise the floor so others can also be excellent. So it was with that spirit I was training police in racial sensitivity. I was doing outreach with sick kids and homeless youth and refugee families, trying to figure in what way I could most powerfully serve and feed my heart, right? So as I was doing that, I was playing ball. Football actually gave me the platform from which to serve in those capacities. Right. So as I was doing that, I signed a contract extension. I'm going out to celebrate with my teammates. I'm approached by 2 guys in a parking lot, end up being armed with guns, threatened to shoot me in the head. And then they started to beat on me. And they beat on me till, you know, the skin on my head split, and I was face down on the pavement and feeling, I can't believe my life is gonna end like this. And I survived the attack, but the attack ended my football career, as you alluded to. But that wasn't the biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge was the fact that the gentlemen that I was assaulted by were 2 corrupt undercover police officers who happened to work for the police force that I was doing work with. I was their spokesperson in the community, trying to bring together police and community. I was actively involved in going into schools with their officers and encouraging young people to stand up for the right thing. So it was this crazy journey when they realized that I was that person. A huge cover-up began where I was taken to jail. They planted drugs at my car. They charged me with assault, police, and possession of a controlled substance. Kayla, it was, even now that I think about it, it's like, it's actually unbelievable. Like we're living in a, you know, like, let me pinch myself. Is today really happening?
Right.
Did last night really happen? That's how I was living for about 2 years, just in disbelief of what we were experiencing. To make a long story short, as we journeyed through the court system, and we were nearing the verdict, one of the arresting officer in my case was himself arrested by the RCMP for trafficking cocaine. They found 17 kilos of coke at his house. So when that happened, even though it wasn't made public initially, when it happened, the Crown attorney that was trying to convict me and send me to prison, she didn't know that I knew about the charges because they weren't made public. Right. So she calls me up and says, "Hey, Orlando, buddy, you do such amazing work in the community." I'm thinking like, where is this coming from?
Switch up.
Yeah, switch up big time, right? And then she's like, we don't think it would be fair for you to get, dragged through the mud. This court stuff is messy. Why don't you just let us drop the charges? Everyone could just go home and be happy. So I was like, wow. So staying present in the moment, I said, so you mean like make a deal? And she said, yes. And I said, no. Because this isn't about going home and being happy. It's about principle. And I actually rather be wrongfully convicted versus striking a deal on that premise. So her response was, fine, buddy, this was your chance. You're going down. And she hung up the phone. And the next call we got was to show up in court. So we show up in court. They petitioned the judge to let them drop the charge. The judge says no, and he said, I actually have prepared my judgment early. I find Mr. Bowen not guilty. These are the reasons why. I was acquitted, and then we filed civil litigation. All in all, it took about 5.5 years. The court settled out of court. And we've been journeying ever since. One Voice, One Team, we started it while I was still dealing with the courts, and people said, you are crazy, because no one's ever gonna support you. Your name is mud, but it's never been about me. It's always been about us, and that's what brings us here.
And it's interesting because, yes, you at the time were dealing with physical trauma, but then the 5 years, it groups in a lot of mental trauma that you have to work through. And I can just imagine that would just make anybody angry, knowing that you were painted in such a way and it was so false. But instead of that and leaning into that emotion, you dug deeper. Where did that come from?
I think it was more, for me, it was more shock than anger with the things that were happening. Because imagine one day you're the spokesperson, and you're the face, and you're at all the graduations as a special guest, and the next day you're being held, in a jail cell and being accused of something that everyone involved knows you didn't do.
Right.
So there was shock. So when I started thinking about, the people who could possibly be impacted by something like this.
Yes.
And when I was at the hospital, Kayla, one of the interesting things was the nurse says to me, what happened? And this was the morning after the assault. And I didn't want to get into everything. I'm like, she's not even going to believe me. So I said, I got jumped. And the nurse looks at me. She had her clipboard in hand. She says, oh, by who? The police? So I had that same look. Wow. So I said, why would you say that? I was offended that was the first thing that came. So I said, why would you say that? And she said, because I see it often, but usually it's teenagers, newcomers, or people who don't speak English well. You don't really fit the bill. And in that moment, I thought about all the young people and the newcomers and the people who don't speak English well that we were working with at that time. And I thought, what if this was them? And what chance would they have? And so then we knew we had to get through it, because it wasn't just about us. It was about those who may be in positions where they feel like the obstacles are insurmountable. These
events, in a way, gave you the first access to what the kids and who the kids you're advocating for are and what they deal with on a day-to-day basis, those that are voiceless and cannot voice what they go through. And then that leads us to this is, access is a huge thing, especially for youth when it comes to the access they have to sport. What are you seeing, and what steps can we take to address that?
I think some of the things that we're seeing as it relates to access is, especially in these uncertain times, there's some financial barriers for folks to be able to access, high quality coaching and just, caring adults, really and truly. People who are willing to pour into the young people. So financial challenges, as well as from a geographical perspective, being able to access centers and transportation and those type of things. And then just, for some, just not knowing what's available, not knowing what's out there, right? And being able to access information that could connect their young people to opportunities to be in positive spaces.
It's like the exposure of the possibility. Well, when they do get in, how important is it for kids to see themselves in the leaders that they are around?
It's incredibly important for them to see themselves. A lot of young people that we've worked with over the years, they actually don't believe that certain things are for them or possible. So people, generally, we operate from a space of what we believe to be possible. So if you don't think it's possible, you're not even going to necessarily put forth the effort, right? So when young people see themselves reflected in leadership, whether that's community leadership, sport coaching leadership, municipal leadership, federal leadership, city leadership in terms of positional leadership, they start to redefine what they believe is possible for them. So by virtue of that physical example, they're able to connect to folks that allow them to dream and say, well, one day maybe I could be like Masai, or maybe I could be like Kayla. So it's so important for them to see those role models so that they could start to redefine what's possible for themselves.
I think for some coaches, they're finding out that the kids that they do coach are hearing the phrase Black Lives Matter for the very first time. And, I'm sure there's a lot that are watching that take their job so serious. It's not what they see on the court or on the field, but they want to be a coach in these children's lives outside of that.
Right.
And a lot of this is having conversations of how to be anti-racist.
Yes.
How does a coach approach that with a kid?
Yeah. Well, I think, any coach that's looking to connect and have these, conversations that are real, that sometimes people are a lot of the times folks are very uncomfortable, comes from a place of relationship, right? So really seeking opportunities to build relationship and start having those conversations. Don't be shy because it's uncomfortable. It's better to say, I'm uncomfortable, but know that we need to have these conversations than to pretend that we don't need to have the conversations, because young people will look at you like you have no clue what's happening in the world as an adult, right? So, starting from understanding like what their lived experiences are, right? What motivates them? What do they dream about? What's possible? How do they think adults see them? And having conversations that will give insight into how they're thinking and into how they're seeing themselves and their value and their possibilities.
I mean, it's ongoing work, right?
Yes.
If you want to educate, you too must also continue to be educated.
100%.
What resources can coaches and parents access to have informed conversations with their youth?
So there are a number of resources that coaches and parents could look at. One that I really like is this book is Anti-Racist. Is one. I can't. The author's name is I can't remember the author's name right now. But the book has some real opportunities for dialogue. It's user friendly in terms of how it's laid out and stuff. So I think that one is a great one for conversation. We talk about reading, reflecting, and responding in terms of how we level up individually. So a book that I love is How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. Another one, White Fragility, Robin DiAngelo. And then there's one there, if you could get past, some of the titles, because some of the titles,
They stop you.
folks are like, I don't know if I want to be.
If you want to be opening up the book, you have the full. Yeah.
Me and White Fragility is one, right? So, or Me and White Supremacy. So, it's important to be uncomfortable sometimes because growth doesn't happen in a state of comfort.
Yes.
Yeah. So we need to read and have conversations around things that will push us and challenge us.
For sure. Keep the dialogue going. I wish we could keep the dialogue going, because anyone could listen to you all day. Do you have any last words of inspiration for the coaches out there that are watching right now?
Yeah, well, I want to encourage you coaches that are out there, to continue to pour into the young people, right? Take time to use whatever gifts, whatever talents you have to really shift what a young person might be thinking is possible for them, right? So talk about your goals, talk about your dreams, and talk about what that could mean for them, and really pour into them, understand where they're coming from, understand what challenges that they may face, and really not just look at, one thing is like, we talk about no one has ever risen to low expectations, right? So see the wisdom and the brilliance in them, then call them to that and hold them accountable to that and encourage them. Not just say, yeah, you could do it, but roll with them and do it with them.
Step by step together. Orlando, thank you so much for all that you do, first and foremost, for our communities, but thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
I appreciate you, Kayla. Thank you.
All right, and a huge thank you to Tangerine, because without their support with this event, it would not be possible. Don't go too far, because we're going to take a short break and continue this session with Raptors assistant coach Adrian Griffin and Sergio Scariolo.